You don't even know the shit I used to deal with you.
Yeah,
we didn't even work together.
We're on. Hold on. Well,
okay.
You know what? You want to keep that on? We'll keep it on. Whatever. Okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, my name is John DePietro. And
my name is Harry Jacobs. Go ahead.
My name is John DePietro, and I want to introduce you to a show that has no name. Now, you've heard that song, I've Been Through the Desert with a Horse with No Name. Well, we're going to take
a horse with no name.
Right.
I've been through the desert on a horse with no name.
Right. So, effectively, why don't we just do this? We've totally ruined our famous professional introduction. Let's just kind of like talk as friends. And with me is my former colleague for a year and a half?
Yeah, short time.
One food drive, Mr. Harry Jacobs, the one and only Harry Jacobs, and the Harry Jacobs, as his email address says. Harry joins us from Las Vegas or in a desert area just outside of Las Vegas. But Harry,
Parts unknown is what I like to tell people.
Yeah,
where you're living now, parts unknown, outskirts of Las Vegas.
Exactly. You may have seen Harry on Cops. He's been, when they were still shooting that show, Harry was apprehended many times as a, were you?
Great. So now I'm a hoodlum. No, but I was in a documentary about police suicides a bunch of years ago. So I actually was in a film playing a criminal fighting with the police. It's kind of fun.
There you go.
Maybe I'll send you a clip. You can.
A very cool role, to say the least.
Right.
But anyway,
absolutely.
Harry and I bumped into each other on Facebook not too long ago. And I said, Harry, you know what? We spent some time together in the radio biz. And as time goes on, a lot of people say, gee, you know what? I wonder what happened to so-and-so. You know, what happened to Paul Tuthill? What happened to Don Richards? What happened to Zip and Bob? Of course, you hear Zip on every car dealer commercial in Central Massachusetts.
And I love Zip's. Well, I could listen to Zip read the phone book. Zip has a voice. I love Peter.
He has a deal now where he reads the phone book. Remember, before you go anywhere, go to Duddy for a Duddy deal. No, a diamond deal. But anyway. So, Harry, what have you been up to since you left town? And then we're going to go back to what you did to start your radio career.
Sure. John, I left radio in, I guess, 1999, 2000. And I went to work for what was part of American Radio Systems, right? There were Boston stations, Mix and the Eagle and a bunch of those stations. And I did a little bit of work for that company for a while, also at ZLX in Boston. And then I ended up, when I left radio, I went back to work for what became of American Radio, which was American Tower. So I kind of got out of the radio business and then did the tower thing for a year or something. I stuck around Boston.
Now, your job wasn't climbing towers and changing that bulb up on the top?
I am so deathly afraid of heights. When you see the videos of those guys, and listen, they're all American Indians, right? The tower climbers in this country, you can Google this, all the tower climbers, and what they have to do, this is a tough job. They've got to climb a tower, and at American Tower, we had some big towers. In the Midwest, we had 2,000-foot towers, right?
Which is half a mile.
Exactly right. So those poor guys would have to climb up the tower just to change a light. I would have a guy for that, right? If someone said, listen, you got to go up to the Des Moines Tower and change that light, I would say, can we find someone? I could pay. I've got cash.
Yeah.
Can we do that?
Well, the funny thing with the towers, as I digress, because my ADD just kicked in,
Sure.
where you look at both AAF and SRS, they were both up on Asnabumskit Hill in Paxton, and their lights were important because it was close to the Worcester Airport. So if a light bulb ever went out.
Anytime you have a tower, especially in the city limits, like I love your backdrop, right? So anytime you see the bank building behind there, that building's over 200 feet. So if someone put a cell tower up there or a little radio repeater, there would need to be a red light flashing. That's why you see red lights flashing on buildings in big cities, to keep the helicopters and to let the planes know, hey, there's a structure here. That's why they do that. But this isn't about the tower business.
You know what's interesting though, Harry? If you look in the left corner of that picture, is that your old hangout at AAF? I mean,
No, as a matter of fact,
XOL?
that's Front Street. That's Front Street. So I never worked in that building. I was in there once or
Oh, you were in
twice.
Worcester Center?
Yeah, but when I worked at AAF when I was a kid, the next block back is Mechanic Street. It's now like a healthcare building of some sort, and 34 Mechanic Street, the Cocaine Realty building.
Cocaine.
That's where I hung out.
Exactly.
More hanging out than working.
So let's do this. Let's go back to West Tatnuck School, where a little fifth grader was part of a class project. And tell us, you remember the teacher's name, and tell us what the project was about? And really, that's kind of the start of your radio career, is it not?
Yeah, it really is. We had a teacher, and I can't remember the teacher's name, but she left on maternity leave, and they brought in a substitute. The guy's name, I'll never forget this, Sheldon Lapin was his name. And I'd love to find him and thank him for what he did ultimately for me, because he made all the kids, this was a really great project. He made all the kids in this classroom pick a different profession. So someone was a car dealer, someone was a bank, someone was the newspaper. And I think it was, I wasn't really a motivated kid. So it was like, there was a radio station was the last one. I thought, well, I listen to music and I have a lot of records and I'm in fifth grade or whatever. So I will become.
That's a natural.
Yeah. I love to run my mouth. So I will be the disc jockey. And then someone gave me the idea, it may have been Mr. Lapin, to contact one of the radio stations and to actually go down there and see what goes on and see if I can maybe add some reality to this, this little project. So I connected with Tom Doyle. Tom Doyle was the morning guy at AAF at the time. He ended up going to WCOZ and then VBF and ROR. He worked with Lauren and Wally for a long time. One of the funniest human beings on the planet. But when I was, in fifth grade, I don't know, are you 9 or 10 or something? 10 maybe?
Yeah.
So 10. So I call Tom Doyle and he invites me to the radio station. I go down there, I visit, I go down a couple times. I begin to build my little radio station in the schoolroom. And I realize at that moment, as I'm playing records and I'm talking, doing who knows what I was talking about, I realized this would be kind of a neat way to make a living. And then I began to go to AAF and 14Q and just hang around there. This was long before labor laws and all that nonsense where you could go and be a kid and be, in this day and age, like, if someone went to WXLO and just started hanging around there, they go, we got laws, we got labor laws here. Bob Goodell would say, get the hell out of here.
Get out of here. I don't want to get in trouble.
Exactly right. You don't want trouble like that. So, I began to just hang out at AAF. And then I learned, I became obsessed with the radio studio, the radio control room. So I learned how to work all of that equipment. And I'd go in the production room when no one was in there. I'd wait for someone to get out. The production room is an identical room to the radio studio. It just wasn't on the air. It's where they go to play, to record commercials.
Yeah.
So I started to do that and mimic what I would see. And I learned, by the time I was 12 years old, I could run a radio studio, run a radio station. And Cliff Blake at the time needed somebody to do something. Sunday morning, I got to run American Top 40. And it was one thing to.
You didn't get to talk. You just pressed buttons, right?
Yeah, you put the needle on the record. You hit the cart that said, American Top 40 continues on 14Q in just a minute, or whatever it was. So I did that. And it was really strange. It's like being in a car for the first time after you get your license where you go, holy shit, I'm in charge.
Well, I just did
right?
it.
So, yeah, right. Was it bad? Did I swore? I'm sorry. I'm not supposed to swear. So, yeah, I'm like, oh, I got this. So then I'm 13 years old at that point, or 12 years old. I hadn't turned 13. So then our chief engineer at the time, Pete Kowaleski, came and said, listen, you got your license fraudulently. At that time, if you were on the radio, you needed to get to the FCC in Boston or in Washington and get yourself a license. You take a test, send it away. They send your license. I got my license. I'm like, hey, I'm legal. And then Kowaleski says, you're not legal. You can't do it until you're 13. And that was the end of that for a minute.
And we should say this is your broadcaster's license, not your driver's license, because you're still 2.5, 3 years away from that.
Yeah,
right?
at that point. Yeah, it was.
So did mom and dad have to drive you down Pleasant Street to the or
John,
did you
who
take
are you
a bus
talking
or
to?
what?
You're talking to the most resourceful person you'll ever have on this show with no name.
Okay.
I took either the number 2 bus, which ran up Mower Street because I grew up on Stark Road. Right. So if you go down Pleasant Street into Tatnuck Square and make that right, behind Pleasant Street and go up, and then it splits off, and there's Olean Street, and then you can go
Yeah,
left
yeah,
and go up Moore Street. The
yeah.
first street on the right is Stark Road, and I grew up at 48 Stark Road, down at the end of Stark Road. So I could either go there and wait for the bus at Moore Street, take the number 2 bus, and I'd go downtown, or I could go behind the house to Olean Street and catch the number 6 bus. How about that? I remember that. The number 6 bus ran or either one. I had an option on either one. The number 6 bus dropped me off in front of City Hall, the number 2 on Front Street, and either way I was at AAF and 14Q in a minute.
And you were too young to even get paid, even get charged.
No, well, no, I got charged. But let me tell you something. When I was doing that, I made a lot of money. I made like $9 or $10 an hour. You think about that when you're 10 or 11 years old.
But that was a ton of dough.
Yeah, there was a ton of dough, especially in 1979, or whenever that was. So I was like, when I got my paycheck, I'm like, holy shit, I get paid to do this. I was beside myself. And then I thought,
3 shifts now, Eric.
I'm sorry. Can you beep? Can we beep? I can beep afterwards. I
No,
can beep
no,
production. Okay. All right. I'm going to cut the shit.
Then it won't
All right.
won't be a real show if we beep it.
And this is me, man. You know what I mean? You knew me. You know what kind of potty mouth. I behaved myself at XLO and AAF, but and SRS, but I've always had a foul mouth. I mean, that's always been, my mother's going to watch this. She's going to be pleased. So at any rate, yeah, I took the bus down to AAF and I started to hang out there, and then I would run the board, and then I became friendly with people. And then in 1981, I will never forget this, in March of 1981, David O'Leary, who's now the morning guy at Magic.
Yeah, who was
right?
the guy
David?
Who went to V66, right? Was he the first guy?
Yeah, absolutely. He and
Garabedian.
Friends, John Garabedian, Ian O'Malley, who's here on Facebook, is there. I talk to him all the time. So they went to V66. But at the time, this is pre-V66, David got sick and he couldn't work. So on a Saturday afternoon at like 2 o'clock, I get a call from Dave Lee Austin, who's the program director at AAF, who said, "Hey, Harry, go ask your parents. It's not, do you want to work? It's, hey, go to your parents.
Go ask your parents.
Go ask your parents if you can work tonight on AAF." And at the time, AAF on Saturday nights ran something called the Saturday Night Six-Pack. 6 albums back to back. And at like 3:30 or 4 in the morning, you got to do a real show until like, Brother John and the Power Line started at 5 o'clock. So keep this in mind. Important fact. I'm 14 years old. I'm in the 8th grade. The shift is midnight to 9 a.m.
9 hours.
Complete violation of labor laws.
Even if you were an adult.
That's right. If I were an adult, I'd be like, screw you. I'm not working 9 hours, right? Find someone else. Now it's automation, right? So Dave says to me, after I get permission, I begged my parents. I went with my tail between my legs and said, please, this is all I want to do with my life is be on the radio. And that's what it was for me. Anyone that's here that watches this will tell you the same thing. This is all he ever wanted to do. I was myopic. So my parents let me do it. And Dave said to me, listen, you're going to do this 6 albums all night long. And then between whatever time the albums end at like 3:30 or 4 and 5, you're going to do a show. You're going to actually get to go on the air and do breaks. But I'm writing all the breaks out for you. So he gave me a piece of paper and he said, here are your breaks. And this is what you're going to say. So I get 3 breaks in. It's like 4:15 or 4:20. I just talked to Dave Lee Austin about this last week after you and I spoke. And instead of saying whatever he wanted me to say, I ad-libbed and used like 3 or 4 of my own words, maybe a sentence. In the radio stations back then, there was a hotline that rang. And
sometimes a red phone too.
Sometimes a red phone. So in the AAF studio, it was behind the control board underneath. But when it rang, it was like a house phone. The thing, it's like our phones with the loud rings on them. So I get done with my break after I changed the words. And before I even had my headphones off, I could hear the phone was ringing. And it was one of those phones that was like, one of those awful phones, except it was on the wall, like underneath the counter.
Yeah.
So I slide back and I grab the phone and I go, hello. And it's Dave Lee Austin saying to me, Harry, if you ever want to be on the air again, you'll follow the fucking script.
That was it.
That was it. That was a lesson. That at any time anyone could be listening to you, and you got to do what you're told to do. So from then on, I just started to, it's an addiction, right? At that point I was like, holy cow, I can do this, and I'm being trusted with this. And it's a big deal. AAF was a 50,000 watt radio station, one of the biggest in New England. And there I am at 14 years old. They could hear me in New York. They could hear me in New Hampshire, in Vermont. And I'm like, oh my God, this is a dream come true. So that's all I wanted to do. So I was a bad student in school. I didn't pay attention. They thought I had a learning disability because I just, I wasn't like science. I don't need science. I don't need geometry.
Were you kind of like the Worcester edition of Howard Stern? Just not pay attention theater?
I think there are a lot of people in that industry and people that are actors and go out and do things. And I'm, do not misinterpret what I'm saying. Yeah. I'm just trying to illustrate a point for who I am, because I am nothing. But there's a whole bunch of people that knew at a very early age that they didn't necessarily fit into what was going on in school and had something else that they wanted to do. And that was me. And, I was, I would talk. I was a talker. I was as my mother would say, quite a charmer.
Quite a charmer,
right?
With her Worcester accent.
Because with her Worcester, and she's got a bad Worcester accent.
Yeah.
So and so at any rate, I ended up, doing some more work at AAF and then FTQ through junior high school and high school, and then when I got out of high school in January of '84, I graduated in May, but in December of '84, I saw something in the Telegram that talked about WFMP, M104. That radio station is based in Fitchburg at the time, and it's on Pritchard Street in a horrible 3-decker. I mean, this is one of the worst places I've ever been.
In a house?
But they were in a house, and they were moving the radio station to Worcester at some point. So being who I am, I copied down the call letters and I called the front desk and said, who's the program director? And I called and I spoke with Jay Dean, who worked at XLO for years and who continues to be a friend, a great book narrator, by the way. He does audiobooks. And he said, come on out and bring a tape. And I brought a tape of me on the air. And like the next Saturday I started, like Saturday afternoon. I wasn't on the air midnight anymore. It was Saturday afternoon at 2:00. And I was in high school.
Get a 12-hour promotion from midnight to noon. Right?
And at that time I had to go to Fitchburg, right? So that's a long way. And I-90 had just been built.
Okay. So it was built. Yeah.
Yeah, it was. So I bought a truck from Harvey Slarsky, who owned the Tatnuck Meat Market.
Tatnuck Meat Market. Yep.
Right? Harvey was a great guy. Great guy.
The smell of old chicken?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So he at one point owned the truck, and then I saw it at Bob Dolan's gas. I think that's his name, the Exxon station. At any rate, I saw it was sitting there, and someone said, hey, Harvey's got a truck down there. It's not running, and you could probably get it. So for $300, I bought that truck from Harvey. It sat in my driveway on Stark Road. One of my buddies came over and helped me put a starter in it, and I was off to the races. This, by the way, is a 1-ton international truck with a big stick shift, like a school bus.
On the floor.
And on the floor, and 2 gas tanks, and a huge meat box on the back of it. And I drove this thing back and forth to Fitchburg.
Did you have the letters at least sprayed out so you didn't say meat?
That was white. It was a pale blue truck with a white box on the back. It's so embarrassing to think back at that now. And if my parents knew that I was going to buy that and it would sit in the driveway broken down for as long as it was, my father did say, I would have bought you a car. This kills me now. Right? Like, who wants that? Listen, you're familiar with the expression hoopty? When people talk about a hoopty, like, get that hoopty out of my driveway. It's a junk car. It's garbage. Like that was a hoopty.
Yeah.
I was driving a hoopty.
Now XLO moves to Worcester. No, it wasn't even XLO, right?
It changed to XLO. Okay. So it took about 1.5 years to move, and we moved right behind where you're sitting right now in terms of the backdrop, which is into the Galleria. We were on the back side of the Galleria above the movie theater in Suite 146. And, for several years, we worked in that facility in the mall. Horrible little
in the back there.
Place. In the back, that's right.
Overlooking that courtyard, right?
There was a courtyard. Good memory. There was a courtyard there outside the movie theater.
Yeah. Well, it's torn down now.
Yeah, I've seen that, and I've paid very close attention to what's happened in Worcester. I always have, and I have a tremendous fondness for it. It's home, right?
Mm.
And I'll tell you something else for a minute. I kind of digress here, but speaking of Worcester, two Worcester stories that you may appreciate. You want the Adam Sandler story, or you want the big ragu?
Your choice.
You want Eddie Mekka. So I've become friendly with Billy Bush, who was on Access Hollywood and is on Extra, and the Trump thing and all that. So he and I've been friends for 25 years or something.
Okay, but go back to how you met Bush, because that's an interesting story when you're up in the bustling metropolis of Laconia, New Hampshire.
When I decided I didn't want to be on the air anymore, one of the things I did is I worked behind the scenes, and I worked for a guy named Jay Williams, who he had a partner owned WXLO and a couple of stations around New England, and they did a bunch of consulting. So Jay had me doing a bunch of work for the station in Laconia. And I remember him saying to me, listen, we got a new kid that's up there. He's in sales. His name is Billy Bush. And I said, like Bush? And Bush had just gotten out of the office. This was, 1993, I think, right? Mm-hmm. So I said, is this? And he said, yes, it is. He said, he's a nephew of the president, blah, blah, he goes into the thing. So I get up there and I meet him. And this is one of those things, John, this doesn't happen all the time. But when Bushy and I met, it was like two people that had known each other all their lives, right? It was like immediately I knew that our friendship would exist beyond whatever was going on for work for us.
Where you were working. Right?
Yeah. So Bushy and I, hit it off beautifully. So then, he launches from Laconia, New Hampshire to Washington, D.C. Then he starts doing work on CNN and the Today Show, and then ultimately gets Access Hollywood. So he gets Access Hollywood, and I moved out here in 2001. January, it'll be 20 years for me. That's about the time Billy moved out here as well. So he's out in LA and I'm here in Vegas, and it's 40 minutes wheels up to wheels down. So we started to see each other again all the time. And I was with him 3 times this summer. We see each other all the time. And I would get to go to these events with him. When he would come to Vegas, he would say, well, I'm going to go do the CinemaCon event. And there'd be, Harrison Ford and Vince Vaughn and Morgan Freeman, all these people. And I'd just be standing around with my phone going, hey, can I get a picture? So I ran into Adam Sandler one day. And I said, hey, I've got to ask you a question. Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you too. I said, I got to ask you a question. He said, what's that? He said, what's up, buddy? Typical Sandler, right? What's up, buddy? And I said, listen, you are from New Hampshire, but you wear a Yankees hat and you're a Jets fan. And you are the antithesis of, and then I'm saying to myself, you're slamming Adam Sandler for his sports choices. And I said, explain to me, what's that?
To his face.
To his face.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, because that's how I am. I'm like, I got to ask you a question. This is weighing in my mind. This has been weighing on my mind. I never thought I'd meet you, but this is weighing on my mind. So he tells me that the story that his father grew up in New York, and his father's a Yankees fan and a Giants fan or a Jets fan, and that's what it was. So he gets himself out of that, and then he says, where are you from? And I said, I'm from Worcester. And he looked at me, John, as sure as I'm sitting here right now on my health. And he said to me, WAAF. Looks at me and says, WAAF. That's his only comment. I'm like, yeah. He said, great radio station. And then something else, nice to meet you, whatever. And I just thought, how impressive is that Adam Sandler, of all the things to remember, AAF. And then the second one was the big ragu, as everyone knows, Eddie Mekka from Worcester, Laverne and Shirley, and anyone on to do a whole bunch of things. I was on the air here at KDON, the AM, one of the big AM stations here. And this was like in, over the winter time. And I was going into a break and I said, something about the weather. And I said, my friends back home, all these poor bastards in Worcester, Mass, where I'm from, are buying every loaf of bread, every gallon of milk they can find. All this is pre-COVID, all the toilet paper they're buying, the place is cleared out. So I do that and I go to break. And then 30 seconds as I'm coming back to break, I look over and I'm in a talk studio. You're looking at a whole bunch of screens, and one of them is a call screen. So I look to see if I have any calls that I want to take. And there's a note from the call screen in flashing light on line 1. And the note says, Eddie Mekka on line 1. So I hit the talkback button to the producer and I said, is that Eddie Mekka, the actor Eddie Mekka? And he said, yeah. I said, does he have a question for me? He's like, I guess so. He asked to talk to you. Okay.
I guess so. He did ask.
I go back on the air. Welcome back to the show. I'm Harry Jacobs, blah, blah, blah. I said, line one from Worcester, Mass, Eddie Mekka. And, he starts talking to me like we're friends. And then ultimately we ended up striking up a friendship. So Eddie Mekka and I became friends. We'd get together and watch Patriots games, watch, Red Sox, watch the Bruins, hung out a bunch of times. So, the sheep, John, they find each other, right?
Exactly.
So couple of good Worcester things.
Exactly. So,
yeah.
When's the last time you've been back in town?
Gosh, I got to believe it's 14 or 15 years. I was just thinking the other day, I should get myself on a plane and come home.
Yep. Yeah. Well,
I will tell you.
Can't fly into Worcester.
I know. And I looked at that too. And I thought maybe I can fly into Worcester. I'll come to Logan or whatever. But you put this post up on this, on the Worcester page. And I got a response, a private response from somebody who I was connected with 29 years ago. And all of a sudden, since that post went up, I've been communicating with this old friend of mine again. I mean, Facebook's wonderful. And most of the time people will just, hit you and like you as a friend and that's it. But there's been good communication and I've been able to reconnect with a great person who I lost touch with a long time ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
So thank you for doing that.
So during the time that you were doing the radio gig in Worcester, the Centrum was around, right?
Yeah, absolutely it was. The Centrum, obviously the Centrum kind of, 1980 or something along those lines.
Yeah, opened in 83. 82.
Yeah.
82, November of 82 with Frank Sinatra. Any stories of backstage events at the Centrum that you got to go to because you were a radio guy?
My fondest memories of the Centrum are my time with people like Greg Tassone and Rich Creswick. Rich was the general manager, and then he ended up going to the Fleet Center and then the New Jersey Devils. Now he runs AEG, the big arena company, all over the world. By the way, Creswick and I are like this, like Billy and I. I got married twice. Creswick stood up both times at my wedding. So Cres and I, continue to be friends. And his son, who I used to bounce on my knee, lives down in Phoenix. Michael. There you go. Michael.
How old is he? Don't tell me he's 30.
Yeah, he's probably 30.
Because my daughter used to babysit for his kids.
On Fox Hollow. They lived up in Fox Hollow in Greendale.
He lived next door to Ray Mariano.
Yeah. So, don't get me started on Ray Mariano. So I got a Ray Mariano story for you too. Can you edit on this thing or not?
No.
Okay. All right. Never mind. That's a story for another day.
Yeah.
I'll get sued.
Yeah.
But he held me hostage, and I will tell you the story in a minute. Let me go back to Creswick. My favorite Centrum stories are with Creswick because I would go into the building. I think I may have even had a pass to get in the building, and I would just go sit in his office, and then he'd walk me out to go see a show.
Yeah.
Like whatever you wanted. Or I'd sit, at that time there was only maybe 2 luxury boxes, right? I forget what they called them.
Right, 108 and 122.
That's right above.
Right across each other.
Yeah, so Rich always took great care. And the backstage and stuff was one thing, but being able to walk into that building and sit in his office and put my feet up on his desk and just have it like I ran the place was amazing. I saw some great shows. I mean, Eddie Van Halen just passed away. I was in the second or third row in 1983 to see Van Halen. I saw Jay Giles like the night before New Year's. I met Peter Wolf, 20 years later when I was in Rochester. I lived a lifetime in one night with him. But I saw some amazing shows. Springsteen, front row for Springsteen. Right. I mean, there was a lot of great Centrum memories for me.
So
go ahead.
You caught Rich on the way back, right? I caught him when he was just. What was he? GM?
No, here's the timing. When I met him, I mean, we knew each other when I was at XLO in like 86, 87, 88, that kind of time period. But around 1990 was the first time, it was like, hey, let's get together. He invited me to his house for a card game. I'm the worst card player in the history of cards. I got 0 poker face and I don't play cards. Right?
Probably why
I live in Vegas. Yeah. So he took my flipping money but we became fast friends, very quickly there. And I watched his kids grow up, Michael and Kimmy. So that, that's a very fond memory. Someone who I remain very close with to this day.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
always to Rich, but the Centrum, that was great.
Yeah. So do you get many Worcester people that come out and say, hey, Harry, I'm from Worcester too. I need you to put me up or help me out with some tickets or whatever. I mean, you're not doing the entertainment thing there, but I'm sure that
No, I'm still pretty well connected. I've integrated myself. I mean, I do something else completely different that I don't really want to waste time on, but I've integrated myself pretty well and have some pretty good connections here. But you know what drives me crazy is the people that call when they're here. They go, "Hey, I'm in Vegas. Come meet me. I'm at the Bellagio or I'm at the
yeah,
Paris."
yeah,
And my desire to go to the Las Vegas Strip is
zero.
zero. It's like living near Disney World. I don't want to go near the Strip,
Yeah.
right? I know how to get in and out. I know how to, use, Frank Sinatra and, and Paradise Road and Koval all behind, the Strip and get in and out. But it's still a huge pain to get in and out. So yeah, people that call me, that's a pet peeve. People that say, "Hey, I'm in town." Well, how long ago did you buy your ticket? Couldn't you have called me or sent me a Facebook message or, we all have these, right? You send me a little text, my phone works, and say, "Hey, listen, I'm coming," and I'll make some plans. I might even get a dinner set up.
So let's talk news for a little bit. Since COVID
Sure.
hit, the lights have gone out in that city. What is it like? I mean, do they still light the Strip at night? Is it quiet? Is it
Yeah.
dark? What's it like?
The Strip is very active right now again. It's going to be some time before we're back to where we were pre-COVID. I think one of the things that happened, obviously, Cirque du Soleil. I don't know if you heard about this back home, but they laid off 3,500 people. Right, they stopped all of their shows.
They have what, 4 or 5 shows in town?
Yep, they do. As a matter of fact, a friend of mine is Carrot Top's manager, and she sent me a message last night because we're doing this on what is today? Wednesday? Tuesday? We're doing this on a Tuesday. So she sent me a message last night saying, "Hey, Carrot Top opens up at the Luxor, this weekend or whatever." So shows are starting to slowly open up. But with COVID, everything's changed. When you walk in there, I don't gamble, but when you walk into a casino, there are all these glass partitions and people are wearing masks, and it's just, it's crazy. And I don't want to get into a debate about masks, but 99.7% survival rate. Those of us that are healthy. My father got it, right? And my father's a cancer survivor with no immune system. And they put him on the same medicine they put Trump on. And in like 4 days, he was out of the hospital. And there's someone that should not have made it. And thank God he did. So, yeah, I think Vegas, it's going to be a long time, though, because we're not back to normal. Plus, if you've been watching the news, there's an onslaught of trouble coming from LA to Vegas, right? There are shootings. There's all kinds of craziness that are happening on a daily basis. Anytime I look at the phone, there were 2 of them this morning. I mean, here's one right now. Officer involved shooting in Henderson near Stephanie and Wigwam, around the corner from where I'm sitting right now. But we're getting 3, 4, 5 a day. It's become a suburb of LA. All due respect to LA.
So when you look back on the radio business, and what's it now? 40 years. It's 40 years. I can't believe we could say anything is 40 years.
Isn't that crazy?
It's a totally new ballgame, is it not?
Yeah, it's strange. I mean, when you look, across this, the backdrop from where you're sitting right now, that building on the corner there on everyone's left as they're looking at this is the building where WXLO is now. And, you don't have to have people 24/7. You're able to record voices and there are empty studios and empty people. The WSRS. And by the way, for all the time I spent at XLO, I'm very proud of what we did when I left XLO and went to SRS. But that radio station doesn't even have a live morning show. The morning show is in Springfield now. So this consolidation of radio and media in general is horrific. And all these people that we know and love, and I'm still deeply connected to a lot of radio people, these people are out of work. These are not people that made a plan to do something else. I am so grateful that I left doing it and said, listen to people like Creswick and others that said, in order to really become something in life, become a salesperson, right? I just didn't think I could do it because I look at salespeople like you, and I would go, "Oh, the sales guy," right? But it's true. Salespeople run the world.
And salespeople can't do a show either.
It's easier to go the other way. I just want to tell you this, and I told you this when we talked a week or two ago. Seeing you do this is really, really great because as a salesperson, you're a very good communicator. But I watched you do this. I've watched a couple of these RV shows and the Kenny Rogers stuff, and I'm like, just a sales guy, and now you're talent, right? Now you're a star, as we say back home. Now you're wicked famous doing these things.
Yeah. I don't know about that, but I appreciate the
Well,
kind words.
You're doing it, right? That's all it takes, right?
Well,
You're doing it.
People today need to find out what others have done to make the industry what it is today. And you never thought you'd get to the point in life where you look back and you say, wow, it was totally different than now. But I remember getting into the radio thing and seeing some of the old timers that were there then and saying, oh, we would never do it that way now. And now they do it with smoke and mirrors where, at certain times of day.
It's the computer, right? There's no more records or carts or any of those things that we use. I mean, you needed to be in that studio. If you walked out to go down the hall to the bathroom or to get a drink,
right,
you had to have your watch on, or you had to go, listen, I can make it back and forth to the bathroom in a minute and a half.
And you had certain songs that you could play that were bathroom break songs. Like MacArthur Park was one of them, and Rod Stewart.
Stairway to Heaven.
Yep.
Free Bird, 13 minutes.
13 minutes.
Right?
So that was
when you're on the rock station, right?
That was exactly. So what do you want to say?
At AAF, by the way, at AAF, a lot of people got locked out in the middle of the night. There are funny stories about like Harvey Warfield throwing a chair or something through the window to get in because you're screwed.
Go out to get
Harvey. And Harvey, by the way, used to smoke these larks, and he'd leave them everywhere upside down burning, right? So, like, you talk to anyone at AAF, you go, Harvey Warfield and the larks. He would leave these cigarette butts everywhere upside down, and they would just burn out. I mean, in this day and age, we'd be fired, right?
Yeah. See, back then, you could smoke in the studio then, but when Norman Knight owned WSRS all those years, it was a no smoking rule within the building. So the personalities used to have to go outside the building
and step out to smoke.
And,
sure.
They still got their smoke in, but they had to go outside. And
it was quick.
That he would be the one who kind of set the tone for indoor smoking, if you will, from that perspective. But we want to thank you so much. Any final words to the Worcester people or those that'll be watching you on the
a handful of people responded when you put your stuff up, and I saw them, and it took me a couple days to like back and forth, like, do I respond, do I not? I don't want to, I'm not a spotlight guy at all, right? Like, I do what I do for fun and for giggles, but like when I saw your post, like, my heart skipped a beat. I'm like, oh God,
what are they going to say?
Yeah. So no, I mean, listen, the thing about Worcester for me is it's always going to be home, and I missed it. I miss it greatly. I had dinner with Billy Bush the other night, and this guy named Steve Astafin. Steve's one of the most famous sports agents in the country. Wasserman Agency, like Kobe Bryant and a bunch of folks like that. And at one point he said, where are you from? I said, I'm from, back home, Massachusetts. He said, I can hear it. Where are you from? And I said, Worcester. And he's from Brockton. I'm like, oh, that's a tough neighborhood. He said, so is Worcester. And I said, no, Astafin, Brockton's worse than Worcester. Don't fuck with me on this. Excuse me.
Yep, there we go.
But you know what I mean? But so another argument I end up in. That one and the Mike Tyson story.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah.
So we want to thank Harry Jacobs for being with us. It's noontime in Vegas when we're
noontime, and let me check the temperature, John, just so we can get an accurate reading. But
82.
You can see 82 degrees.
And you know what? We had those same numbers here, but they were reversed.
28.
As we got 6 inches of snow over the weekend in Worcester, and then plowable snow. And then it melted, and then it snowed again this morning. So who knows what's going on? Although it's supposed to be 70 on Saturday.
I love snow. I could watch it on TV any day of the week.
So, folks, if you have a question for Harry, just down at the bottom of this Facebook page, depending upon where you're viewing it, type in the question. Harry will be watching it. And if you like this, and we're going to be doing some other videos, tell us who else you'd like to see, whether they're from the media or otherwise, and we'll see if we can track them down. So, and down in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen, there's a little red button that says subscribe. If you have the capability to do that, press the subscribe button, and then a little bell will appear. Press the bell, and then every time we do a new one of these babies, you'll be the first to get it. Remember, this special offer is not available in stores. Harry, as we have the music going into the break, give us we'll be back with more right after this, and you throw in the station that you worked at.
this show, which is got no name, will continue right after this break on WXLO.
See y'all.
How about that?